They say you should never get attached to material things. But when a predator destroys the one thing you bled for years to earn, you don't just let it go. You ensure they regret it for the remainder of their existence. This act of felony vandalism triggered a legal and financial dismantling of the person responsible. Before we dive in, which country are you watching from? Comment down below. The scene was a calculated act of terror. My $100,000 Lotus Emira, a machine I had sacrificed for over 4 years to acquire, sat violated under the cold glow of a street lamp. Red spray paint screamed, "I warned you," across the rear window. All 4 high-performance Pirelli tires were slashed to the rim. Both side mirrors snapped clean off their housings. My reaction wasn't panic or rage. It was the cold, methodical assessment of a professional investigator analyzing a crime scene. The financial scale of the damage was immediately clear. This was felony vandalism, and the trigger for a counter-operation. And there was only one suspect. Karen, the obsessive HOA board member whose petty crusade had just escalated into a declaration of war. My background isn't in cars, it's in dismantling criminal enterprises. For 20 years, I served as a special agent in the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigations, the OSI. My specialty was complex contractor fraud and financial crime. I hunted sharks, not neighborhood bullies. My authority was intellectual and procedural. I built airtight cases that put men who stole millions of dollars behind bars. The same brutal discipline it took to save for that car, 0 vacations, 0 impulse buys, driving a wheezing rust bucket until it begged for mercy, was a direct application of the financial planning skills I honed in the military. I retired to this quiet cul-de-sac seeking peace. But what Karen didn't know was that while I left the service never left me. She thought she was targeting a yuppie with a new toy. She had no idea she had just declared war on a man who treated suburban politics like a hostile theater of operations. Karen's authority was a fragile construct built on intimidation and connections. She was an overzealous board member in her mid-50s, but her real power came from her brother-in-law, a senior partner at the powerful law firm that represented the master HOA. She wielded this connection like a weapon, threatening residents with financially ruinous legal action over trivialities like the color of their mailbox flags. She had bullied more than one family into submission with the threat of lawsuits they couldn't afford to fight. She saw the law not as a shield for the innocent, but as a club to beat down anyone who challenged her reign. I had become her new obsession the day I rolled into the neighborhood. Her initial confrontation was a masterclass in veiled threats, where she casually mentioned her powerful legal connections, believing the mere hint of a lawsuit would be enough to intimidate me into selling the car she deemed inappropriate. It never occurred to her that I was a bigger weapon than any lawyer she could ever hire. The night I found my car vandalized, my OSI training activated instantly. My driveway was now a crime scene, and I treated it as such. Before touching a single piece of evidence, I took over 50 forensic-style photographs from multiple angles and elevations. I secured the high-definition Ring camera footage that captured her entire act of destruction and immediately created 3 separate encrypted digital backups stored on different networks. I didn't just call my insurance company. I began building a prosecutable case file as if I were preparing it for a U.S. attorney. I researched the specific statute she had violated, California Penal Code 594, felony vandalism, and printed out the text of the law. To legally cement the charge, I obtained 3 separate itemized repair estimates from certified high-end auto body shops. The lowest estimate came in at over $11,500, placing the crime far above the $400 felony threshold. A week later, I walked into my attorney's office. I didn't show up asking for help. I arrived and placed a 1-inch thick evidence binder on his desk. He reviewed the contents in stunned silence. The pristine video, the sworn affidavits, the itemized damage reports, the legal citations. He looked up at me and said that in 20 years of practicing law, he had never had a client deliver him a case that was already 99% won. The HOA meeting was the perfect battlefield for my authority reveal. Karen was there, sitting with an air of smug invincibility. When the floor opened for new business, I didn't make a speech. I simply connected my laptop to the projector and began my intelligence briefing. The ring footage filled the wall. I narrated the events calmly as they unfolded, pointing out key details like a seasoned analyst. Here, at 2:14 a.m., you can see the suspect, Karen Baker, approach the vehicle. Note the gloves and hoodie, indicating premeditation. The room was dead silent. I continued. At 2:15, she defaces the rear window and then proceeds to methodically slash all 4 tires. Karen's face went white. "That's edited," she shrieked. "This is harassment." My attorney, Sam, stood at the back of the room. His voice cut through the air like a razor. "Under California Penal Code 594, what you are watching is a felony, and my client has already filed a criminal complaint. The public humiliation was total. Neighbors began recording the confrontation on their phones. The story was no longer private. In a final, desperate bluff, Karen screamed, 'My brother-in-law will sue you for slander.' My narrated response in my head was ice cold. It's not slander when it's true. And she was about to find out how little her connections meant when faced with an airtight criminal case. The retaliation was a two-front war, executed with surgical precision. 2 days after the meeting, a uniformed police officer served Karen with a criminal summons at her front door. The next day, a process server delivered the civil lawsuit papers, demanding full restitution for all damages, legal fees, and punitive damages. The legal assault was designed for maximum impact. The criminal case was for justice. The civil suit was for financial ruin. The effect on her power base was immediate and catastrophic. The HOA board, facing a massive liability and presented with the undeniable video evidence, held an emergency session and voted to formally censure her, stripping her of all duties and providing their full cooperation to the police investigation. Her brother-in-law's prestigious law firm, upon being notified of the pending criminal charges, immediately dropped her as a client to avoid the toxic association. In the span of a week, she had gone from the neighborhood tyrant to a completely isolated pariah. She was utterly alone, trapped in a legal pincer movement of her own making. Court day was a formality. Karen walked in wearing a forced smile, but the illusion of her confidence shattered the moment the prosecutor played the high-definition video for the judge. My testimony was brief, professional, and devoid of emotion. I presented the facts as if I were delivering a report to a commanding officer. The judge did not mince words. "Using your HOA position as a pretext to commit felony vandalism," he said, his voice ringing with contempt, "is not only unlawful, it is a profound abuse of community trust." He found her guilty on all charges. The sentence was the final nail in her coffin. She was ordered to pay $13,100 in restitution and legal fees. She was given probation, mandatory community service, and a brief, humiliating stint in county jail. And the judge added the final, lethal detail. He informed her that under California Code of Civil Procedure 699.720, failure to pay the judgment within 30 days would result in the legal seizure of her assets, starting with her house. 2 months later, her house went dark. A moving truck appeared one morning, a silent admission of her total defeat. By sundown, she was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, just a void where a menace used to live. Her humiliation was not a shouting match. It was a quiet, complete erasure from the community she tried to terrorize. I didn't throw a party. I simply piloted my Emira, its paint immaculate, tires new, engine purring, on one solitary victory lap around the block. A few neighbors waved. A couple clapped. I parked the pristine car in my driveway, a silent testament that justice had been served. For the first time in months, I took a breath that wasn't heavy with tension. Sometimes, winning isn't about being the loudest. It's about being the most prepared. It's about letting the truth and the law do the talking for you.